Hi, and welcome to Real Clear Fetish Talks Real Clear Play, a podcast that dives into fetish life and sober life as well. So it's just a mixture of the two and see what's in between and different experiences, different guests. And this week I'm in Liverpool. Well, I'm not in Liverpool, but my guest is in Liverpool. Hi, Ben.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm really good, thanks, Ralph. Good to chat to you.
You too, you too. Like in every episode, I do four standard questions at the start, and we'll just see where the conversation goes.
Okay, no problem. I'll look forward to them.
Fantastic. What do you prefer I call you? Name, pronouns, and title.
Okay, you can just call me Ben, and pronouns are he, him.
Fantastic. Any titles?
You can call me Sarah if you want to. I didn't
Oh,
realise it was that sort of conversation, but
oh,
I'm
no,
quite
no.
happy with that.
Oh, Ben or Sir is fine for me. You know
Yeah,
this.
you can sit with
Uh,
Ben if you want.
tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I'm a professional fine artist. I'm based here in Liverpool, but I exhibit stuff all over the world. I've done residencies and worked for all sorts of people, and I work mostly in sort of collage and mixed media. I use photography and a lot of other things. I've been probably around and involved in the fetish scene for quite a long time, probably seriously, probably about 15 years or so. But before that, I was always sort of intrigued and dipped in and out of it. In the last sort of 10 to 15 years, I'd say I've become more, let's say, closely involved. um, I try and sort of attend a lot of events as much as time and money allows, like most of us.
Hmm.
Foursome Europe's always a joy, and Easter Fetish is always good as well, which I saw you at recently.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
In some ways, I think I prefer that.
Completely sober, clear-headed, or social drinker?
Yeah, completely sober. I mean, I have occasionally had a drink in recent years, but I can't remember the last time I had an
Mm.
alcoholic drink. I used to drink quite a lot when I was younger. I did a lot of things when I was younger. But again, probably about, I guess, 8 to 10 years. I haven't really drunk at all. I can't even remember. I mean, and even in that time when I've had a drink, it's probably been like one beer or like half a glass of wine or something like that.
So,
But I'm definitely not a social drinker. I don't drink when I go out.
what is clear play to you, and why is it important?
I think for me, I just prefer the way that when you're completely sober, it sounds a really obvious thing to say, but you're just more present.
Mm.
You're more able to. Well, first of all, when you're in the moment and you're playing, or you're with a person or a group of people or whatever it might be, you're completely conscious of it and in the moment and able to um, engage with the person or the people that you're with. And also, for me, more importantly, well, not more importantly, but in addition to that, afterwards you can remember it and enjoy that afterwards as well, and enjoy the memory. If you've had a really good session with someone, you want to be able to think about it afterwards, and sometimes as a way of engaging with that person or those people again and reliving it. And other times it might just be a one-off experience that you never see that person again. But either way, it's good to be able to look back on those memories, which is slightly more difficult when you've had a few gin and tonics or whatever.
Yeah, on occasion, at least when I was still using and so on, I would have sex with a whole bunch of men, and I wouldn't be able to pick them out of a lineup
Yeah,
if my life depended on it, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah, absolutely. I feel like I don't. There's. I can't think of an aspect of when I was drinking and stuff and going out that I miss. There's nothing about it that I miss, and I feel like, and it's funny because when you reflect on um, stuff you did and behaviours you had when you were younger, I feel like there's probably about over 50% of the time, certainly, I was just doing it for the sake of it, and I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that there wasn't some great times, and there are great times that I remember and great social things, but at the same time, there's a lot of it that was completely unnecessary, and yeah,
Oh,
I don't.
I'm pretty honest when it comes to my drug taking. Not all of it was bad.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
there's a reason we drink alcohol. There's a reason we do drugs because in generally it can be fun
yeah,
if
yeah,
done responsibly, or you don't become an addict to it where it becomes destructive.
when it can be, yeah.
So, so I always kind of like when I'm talking to someone and they like want to try certain things, it's like I'm not going to tell you not to try it, but I'm going to
Absolutely.
tell you what it did to me, and then you
Yeah.
need to take that into account.
Yeah, yeah, and any one of us can go down that road. It's no, I don't think anyone is immune from going down that road of really negative behaviours and how, and it's when it starts to overspill and affect the rest of your life as well, not just your social life or your kink life. When it starts to affect your home life and your family life and your work life and all of those things. And I mean, I suppose I'm looking away. I never had a. I don't think I ever had a problem with drink. I think there were. Sounds like a contradiction. I think there were probably times when I drank too much.
Hmm.
I never had a sense that I relied on it in the way that some people I know have done and still do. It wasn't a huge wrench to not drink for me personally. I understand that it is for people who are more reliant on it, stuff like that. I just made a conscious decision to back away from it, and it wasn't. Again, it sounds really corny, but it's true. It wasn't adding anything to my life or my experience of work, social life, kink play, whatever. It wasn't adding anything. It didn't seem like a necessary component for me. And it's interesting because the hardest part of not drinking is not so much the physical sense that you're withdrawing from anything or anything like that. It's the social pressure of,
Hmm.
especially in this country, in Britain, it's so normalized that everywhere you go, people will say, "Oh, just have a drink, have one. One won't do you any harm," and all of that. And when you say, "Oh no, actually, I don't drink," you're sort of treated with distrust, and it just doesn't register with people. And now I think it sounds arrogant. I don't mean it like that. I think a lot of people behave like that because they are justifying their own behaviours.
Hmm.
If they do it in a group, if everyone's getting pissed and having a drink, then their behaviours are justified. Now, I'm not obviously not everyone who has a drink has a problem, and not everyone who has a drink drinks too much. But there's a lot of I think there's a lot of people that look for positive affirmation in others. Does that make sense?
Oh,
And when
absolutely. I've been equally both on both sides of that. I've
yeah,
been the person peer pressuring someone and shaming them for not drinking,
yeah,
like you said, just making it feel less guilty about my own drinking habits. And
mhm,
now been on the other side of it, where you almost, if you say you don't drink, if there's not a specific reason for it,
yeah,
it's you're all of a sudden treated a bit other.
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
like, oh, are you on antibiotics? Or
yeah, yeah.
that's the typical one you go for in the gay scene. It's like, oh, you're on antibiotics.
Yeah. Have you been down the
Was it?
clinic? Yeah.
Yeah, was it down the clinic? I guess the concept of just not drinking is still quite new to this country. We are seeing more of it. And slow, especially with the younger generation, they're just like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
we can't be bothered with it anymore. What does it actually add?
What does it bring to the table? Yeah,
Yeah.
and how does it make you be a better version of yourself? Or, I mean, I get that people use certain things because they particularly in a social context or go into kink big events and stuff like that can be a bit overwhelming, and people feel
Mm.
they just need something to round the corners and take the edges off and stuff like that. I mean, I'm quite lucky that that doesn't bother me. If I want to go somewhere and do something, I'll just do it. I'm not bothered. I don't care. Like I've always had a certain amount of I suppose self-confidence that I just think that if I want to do that, I'll do it. Like I can walk into a big event or a room where I don't know anyone and I don't have to have a drink.
Can I borrow some of that? Because I'm not always that lucky.
I'm just I'm just shameless. I just don't care.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good.
And I understand that not everyone possesses that ability, you know. But I also think it's interesting you saying about the sense of otherness, and it's so true. And I feel like for me, I've dealt with it in a way because I think being creative and being an artist, there's a sense of an otherness, and I think a good thing for an artist. It seems like there's negative connotations about being an outsider or not being part of a group, but really from a creative standpoint, it's very important because that's where the observation comes. You have to be, it's a combination of being part of something, but also being outside and looking in the window and being able to look at that and analyze it and channel it and use it in your creativity. And it's a similar kind of thing. So because I've always done that, I guess that sense of otherness, when I was younger, it was harder to deal with because especially when you're young, you want to be part of a tribe, you
Mm.
want to be part of a group, and whether that's defined by music or or culture of any kind, or fetish, or whatever it might be, you're so keen when you're younger to please. But I think as you get older, that lessens, and you get to the stage where you think, I don't care. This is what I am. This is what I like, and that's the way it is. And I think that sense of otherness becomes a strength rather than a weakness.
I think people have different stages where they get to the I don't give a fuck age.
Hmm.
I'm not quite there yet. Uh,
Hmm.
but do you come off as, am I right to assess you're quite extroverted?
See, I don't think of myself as an extrovert. I mean, I can. No, I wouldn't say extrovert. Well, that sounds like a contradiction. I'm a bit of a show off.
Well, you're an artist. Of
You
course, you
know,
need to be a show off.
yeah, yeah. And artists have an ego, I suppose. If I'm being completely objective, it's hard to be objective about yourself, isn't it? But I wouldn't say that. I would say there's, yeah. I mean, I could. It's funny. It depends on the situation. If I'm in a big group of people and there are people who are big characters and who are loud, I will naturally recede.
Mm,
So I'm not extrovert in that sense. I mean, I've never, I mean, I do sort of public speaking and things like that because I occasionally get asked to stand up in front of people and talk about one thing or another, and I will do it if I'm asked, because I'm a great believer. If someone asks you to do something, if someone's interested in you enough to want to hear what you say, it's good
mm.
manners to actually do it. If people can bear to hear what you've got to say, then that's great. If people are interested. So I will do it, but I wouldn't actively seek that out. I wouldn't actively seek out performing in any way.
Let me reformulate it. You're an extroverted introvert. That's a
Yeah,
little bit like me. When I have my official mask on, I'm quite comfortable. Like if
yeah,
someone asks me to do public speaking, yes, I'll be nervous, but I'll put the official face on,
yeah,
and the nervousness and stuff like that would just be left over there because I'm on stage mode, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. And
A
it's a
little bit
version
like
of
a
yourself.
little bit like how I am here on the podcast is not necessarily equal to how I am in real life.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand. Yeah, I understand completely. I mean, something stuck with me when I was at art college years ago, and because obviously a lot of the time, if I'm asked to speak, I'm asked to speak about my work, or I'm asked to speak about aspects of my career and stuff like that. And one thing stuck in my mind that a tutor said to me years ago was that when you're stood up and talking about your work, you are the expert. No one else in
Mm,
the room knows more about your work than you do. And
mm.
that I felt that quite empowering. I thought, well, yeah, because you can. I mean, say anything with conviction, and people will believe you. And
Fake it
and
till you make it.
yeah, absolutely. And I could totally be the king of sort of post rationalization, and you make something and then you work out afterwards why you did it. So when you're talking about it, that you, I mean, if I'm asked to give a talk, like I did one a few months ago at a museum, and obviously I had notes and I was prepared and I stood at a lectern and it was all very formal.
Mm.
Uh, but you have to allow for sort of spontaneity, and I'm not a comedian or a an expert in performing or anything like that. But I like to think I've got a reasonable fluency when I speak, and I'm certainly when I'm speaking about my own stuff or my own life, I can do it with a certain amount of authenticity, I hope.
So
Um,
talking about your art, I was thinking about it because I've seen some of your art pieces. I've been to an exhibition here in London where you were exhibitioned, and the word that come into my head, and I hope you'll be okay with using the term, your art is quite camp.
I guess it is, yeah,
But
yeah,
it's also, I like the mixture of campness and also,
provocative,
yes, yes, because it can feature nude stuff and men and cocks and all sorts on the canvas, and I like that mixture of it because especially as fetish men we get so bloody serious
yeah,
times. It's like, oh, calm down, we're running around in dead cow skin, it's not
yeah.
that serious.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, no, camp is fine. I'm quite happy with that. I mean, I've always liked the reclamation of the word queer and things like that, and I like the connotations of that, and I know some people don't like that, and
Yeah.
that labels are fine for those that want them. That's one I'm quite comfortable with, and I always liked the connotations of strangeness of that word and otherness. I mean, that links into what we
Mm.
were just saying, and so I suppose camp is an extension of that, and I guess I define some of my taste in terms of the spaces I like to inhabit are quite calm. I mean, I blame, my when I was very young, my mum had an aunt who lived in a tiny um, council flat not far from where we lived, and it was when you walked in the door, it was like Liberace had moved into Versailles, but in miniature.
Oh, fantastic.
She had chandeliers that nearly touched the floor. She had the sink in the bathroom was a pink shell with gold taps. And I was fascinated by this as a child, and I think that probably set my taste when I was quite young. So I guess that kind of aesthetic creeps into my work. I love the bright colours, and I use a lot of sort of shiny stuff and the glitter and so on. I mean, I have done. I mean, in the past, I've used stuff the shiny stuff is broken glass and syringes and stuff like that. So there's a darker sort of sensibility about it. But I do quite like that sort of aesthetic, the frivolous sort of nature of camp, I guess. And I like,
Well,
and I do like to combine that with this idea of sort of hypermasculinity, and when you bring the two together, it hopefully it creates a slightly different language. And
it's I feel like maybe in the last couple of years we've gotten better at it,
Mhm.
and not being so scared of it, and not shaming Leatherman for either being slightly flamboyant, or I categorize myself as just being myself. But a lot of people were just like, "Are you masculine?" And it was like, well, define what is masculine to me,
Yeah, it's very
really.
complicated. Yeah,
And in the last couple of years, I've checked myself as like, do I have some toxic traits? I think I probably mentioned on a previous episode, or maybe I haven't, where during lockdown I tried to buy nail varnish and put it on my nails and see how I felt about it. And weirdly enough, I felt really uncomfortable. And I was just like, where's this coming from? What that doesn't matter. When I was a kid, I didn't mind at all. I was a very flamboyant kid. My mom let me express me the way I wanted to express myself. But as an adult, I've become weirdly conditioned to be really uncomfortable with it.
yeah. I suppose, yeah, and I think we all do that if we're honest. I
Mm.
don't, yeah, I think, and I'm sure I have as well. I can certainly identify with some of the things you're saying there. I think, I suppose it's just children are less when we're young. When we're children, we're
Mm.
less self-conscious, and
Yeah.
we just don't think about it. And as we get older, we begin to curate our personality, don't we? And we collage ourselves into a version of ourselves that we aspire to be, and like a bit like fake it till you make it. But and whether that's in the way we dress or the way we look or the way we behave, um, we definitely become more conscious as we get older. And I think it's funny because it seems like there can be a full circle moment that as you go through your 20s and 30s, as you get towards your 40s, you sort of return to that, maybe not the level of when you were a child, but like we were saying before, you just give less of a fuck, and you just think,
Mm.
this is what I'm into, this is what I like. And if you're not harming anyone, if other people don't like it, then it's tough shit, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kink is such an objective thing, really, because we're all very different in what type of kinks we like and so on. And if it doesn't hurt anyone, who are we to judge, really? As long as it's not illegal, then
Yeah,
it's
yeah. And oh, they're consenting to being hurt. That's
yeah. Well,
the different matter. But
I did have a boy over on Friday, so he was
excellent,
very much tied up on my door and
excellent.
very much flogged. So that was quite fun evening. So for anyone watching the episode and not listening, they can see behind Ben there is a big collage painting. What would you call it? What do you call
All
it?
right, yeah. Well, to be honest, I'll tip it up so you can see his face there. That's I guess it's. I always call them paintings, or I often do, but they're not really. The paint is part of it, but yeah, collage. So this is that particular piece was one I did when I was, well, I didn't make the piece in America, but I was in LA for a few months,
Mhm.
and I did a shoot with a guy who's an actor, um, and it was we did this shoot in it was very LA. There was palm trees and a swimming pool, and it was all rather sort of Hotel Paradiso kitsch, which was quite nice. And so it was my sort of vague homage to David Hockney and his swimming pool paintings of the '60s. And there was
Ah.
there was a great interview he gave where because he was from Bradford originally and went to art college in London and very quickly moved over to Los Angeles. And he did this interview, and there was this rather po-faced English interviewer who said to him, and they're sat on this terrace in the glorious sunshine with palm trees, and this interviewer, in all seriousness, said to him, "Why did you move to Los Angeles from Bradford?" And he just, I mean,
Let me think
yeah,
about it.
I'm not suggesting for one moment that Bradford does not have its charms. I'm sure it does, but
Yeah,
he just,
let's not read Bradford because we might get them in our comment section. We don't
no,
want
no, Bradford is a wonderful place. There's lots of great creative people come from Bradford, so it must be wonderful. But he sat there by the swimming pool with a cocktail in his hand and a cigarette in the other, and he just said, "Because everyone has swimming pools," which I thought was rather lovely. So I wanted to sort of make a little homage to that. But yeah, to be honest with you, it's only here because it's about the only space in the house that I've got for it. It's 6 foot high and 4 feet wide, and
Oh my God, that is huge.
I do some quite large pieces. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I've seen some of your pieces. Is there any, well, I know your style. You like gemstones and rhinestones and masculine images and so on. What inspires you to do certain pieces?
Lots of things, really. I mean, I guess the style that I work has probably evolved over many years, and
Mm,
it's almost like a process of elimination. So I just instinctively work with things that I like. So I like anything shiny. I like bright colours. I like photographing men with no clothes on. I like, and I just thought, well, what So it's to me, it's just instinctive to bring all of these things together. So when I see inspiration everywhere. It can be from meeting somebody. I can meet someone and think, I'd really love to make your portrait. There's something about you that is really interesting. I mean, I try and work with as many as a broad selection of people that I can, because I think it's really important to show
mm,
diversity in the kink community and stuff like that. I mean, I do other stuff that's not kink as well, but I think that's really important. I'm not in a really dull sort of box ticking way, in a way that's instinctive. But I think it's important to show people of different ages, different sizes, different descriptions, and I
yeah.
feel like that makes more of a statement than just a cookie cutter, everybody looking exactly the same. And there's lots of photographers and artists that have a style that they work with a certain type of
Mm.
person, and that's fine. I'm not criticized. I would never
No, no, no,
criticize
no, God, no.
anyone for their artistic choices. That's just not how I like to work. So I find inspiration in, I think it's people. I think it's meeting people, and because if it wasn't for people that wanted to be photographed and wanted to show off, I'd be stuck doing pictures of bowls of fruit and vases of flowers, and there's enough of that in the world.
And there's
It's
some very good art around fruit bowls and flowers.
beautiful. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. We could. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not. But that's I think essentially what I try and do. I think what a lot of artists do, and what I certainly try and do, is you want to be a storyteller and find a narrative, and it's people that I'm interested in, and their stories. So it's what I try and do with my work. It's not just about how a leatherman might look or how they want to present themselves, or that facade. It's about who that person is inside as well. And that's what I'm, whether it's successful or not is for other people to say, but that's what I'm attempting to achieve anyway.
Mm.
But then inspiration, I can also see, even if it's just something as simple as um, seeing something on the street, or a color combination in an advert, or a poster, or a piece of graffiti, or those kinds of things inspire me as well. Just when I'm not photographing people, I'm photographing things like, I really love like brutalist architecture and and that kind of thing. I find that really interesting. So because
But
a lot of the stuff I do, that I photograph the people, but I also photograph all of the other elements as well.
yeah,
Um,
so when you do a collage where you have the different elements in the picture, you have maybe the central person you're portraying. So everything around them is also photographs of yours.
no, yeah, more often not, either photographs that I've taken or something that I've drawn, or very occasionally something that I've reappropriated from found imagery or scanned in from books and stuff like that. But yeah, I'd say probably 90% of it are images that I've made, either something I've photographed in the real world or something I've drawn. Or I do less and less drawing. it's funny because if I go to an exhibition of other work, if it's drawings or paintings, I always feel really inspired and think when I get back to the studio, I'm just going to make a painting or I'm just going to make a drawing, and it never quite happens. It always ends up.
Well, I think inspiration when at least with myself, my creative outlet is I write poetry,
Okay,
and that's a thing I don't do it very often because I normally write out of distress, if that
right,
makes
okay,
sense.
yeah, yeah. I think
It's
a lot of writers do, yeah.
yeah, and that's normally like a snapshot of where my brain is at when I write it. So I always kind of joke if anyone reads my poetry, I just kind of disclaimer, I'm not suicidal
Yeah,
before you read it.
that's good.
Um,
Yeah.
but it because that's quite easy to do. Like if you have like an inspirational moment, you just write it down. But if you're inspired somewhere and you're a painter and so on, you have to get home and you need to keep that inspiration. So I can kind of understand you look at someone doing a painting and you want to do a painting, but then you come home, then the moment might have gone by then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I mean, the thing, an idea can come in a second, but then to
Mhm.
make a large piece of work can take 4 or 5 weeks. So I
Do,
think,
do, do I dare ask how much the one behind you took? How long that took?
how long that took? Oh gosh, that probably took about probably 5 or 6 weeks,
Wow, that is an investment of time, isn't it?
something like that. I mean, it's hard to be 100% accurate because often I've got sort of 3 or 4 things on the go at the same time, and that are at various stages of completion. All in.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of studios. I've got a small one at home, and then I have a larger one that I make pieces like this in. And I'll do sort of a couple of hours on one piece, and then, obviously then a certain layer needs to dry, and I'll go and do something else while that. And so, but yeah, if I from start to finish, probably about 6 weeks or something like that. Keep
So
me busy.
around kink side of your life, where does your kinks come from? What I know you identify as a sir, and also like explain your kink aesthetic because you don't necessarily fit the clone kind of mold we see a lot. Like I'm myself like that. I wear langlets. I have the mustache, where you are, I would say, much more punky.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, I guess so. My kink comes from, I think a lot of it's a common story enough in our scene. It comes from something long ago and deep rooted, and
Oh God.
from childhood. I mean, one of my earliest memories with something leather was my dad was in the police,
Mhm.
and he had a friend who was on a police motorbike and he used to come to the house, and I remember him coming and he had his bike leathers on, and the bike was on the front driveway, and he came in and left his leather jacket hanging in the hall, and then went into the kitchen to speak to my dad. And I must have been about 7 or 8. And I remember being obsessed with this jacket and just the feel of it and the smell of it and things like that. And yeah, that obviously at that age, you've got no concepts that this is
No.
some sort of, um, or what it will, turn into later in life. But that, yeah, I remember that very vividly. And then, of course, years later, as a young teenager, I discovered, Tom of Finland and Robert Mapplethorpe and things like that. And all of these different things began to sort of solidify in my mind. And I guess there was just a part of me that by the time I was sort of 15, 16, thought, well, those images are out there. Someone's made these images, so it exists. And why can't you turn yourself into that?
Mm.
So I began that journey quite young. And I guess the sort of the when I was a teenager as well, I was really into sort of I was probably into punk and goth and alternative scene before I was into leather. And I used to go to,
Mm.
I used to sneak out and go to clubs and gigs and stuff like that, and dye my hair black and all of that kinds of thing, and like sat in corners smoking, rolling my eyes at everything, and I'm looking rather sullen, and hanging around the back of the school smoking when I should have been doing geography or whatever, and that kind of thing. Um, so I was probably into that, and even obviously in alternative sort of cultures and music scenes and stuff like that, leather is a part of that, boots and
Mm.
jackets, and that these things all sort of feed into each other. So I was into that first probably, and then I guess it's like my work that I make myself a collage of everything that I like and put it together. And I like, I mean, I love all the Langlets and the Westco boots a lot. I think they're really stunning, and I photograph a lot of people in them. And but for me, I just have a sense that it wouldn't work for me.
Hmm.
But I think part of it is, I mean, I couldn't afford a Langlets jacket for one, but but even if I could, I feel like there would be a certain for me personally, there'd be a certain amount of inauthenticity about it. And although they are incredible and they look amazing, and I'm more than happy to photograph people in them or out of them. Um,
On the side and naked, yes.
I mean, I like to think that that in the kink scene and the leather scene, there's no right or wrong way of doing it. There are so many interpretations, and for me, as long as it's bringing something of yourself and an authenticity, then that's fine.
Yeah, it's just like I think in the last couple of years it's been quite important. Yes, there is the typical brands people go for. Langlets, Wesco, Stainers, whatever brand people go for, Rob, Amsterdam, stuff like that. And that's fine, but not everyone can afford that.
Yeah, yeah.
Or sometimes it's just not their aesthetic, and that's fine. I kind of jokingly like if I'm meeting someone at a bar, it's like, well, I'm the one in the leather trousers and the bald head, and it's like, well, that describes most bloody fetish men.
That's not going to narrow it down. Yeah.
But if you were going to describe yourself to someone else, that you would, I think you, when I see you, you stick out of the crowd because you don't necessarily follow the mold, which is for me very nice to see because it's as fun it can be to be a leather clone, which I fall under that category. Sometimes it's nice to see something different and be inspired by that. For example, like Darklands can be such an inspiration pool for gear with combinations and different styles and colors and so on. It's almost like art. You get inspired. It's like, oh, I really like that outfit.
Oh
I'll take
yeah,
that
yeah.
bit. I'll take that bit. I'll take that bit and put that together, and that worked really well.
Yeah, and that's making a collage.
Yeah.
You can, but I feel like the world, the way we look ourselves or what we create, the aesthetic world is like a supermarket that you can shoplift everything from and put it together and create your own version of yourself. I mean, I've just done it in six. I mean, I've dressed in a certain way from a teenager, and I always have. Because I've never had a proper job. I've never had to conform. I've never had to sort of part my hair in the centre and wear a suit and things like that, which is really lucky. And I never, I'm not doing it consciously to stand out because
No.
I just do it because that's how I feel comfortable when I walk out the front door. And I never notice people looking, but my husband John will always say to me that he'll notice that people are looking, and I never do. I mean, especially if I haven't got my glasses on when I'm outside, I can't see anyway. So I'll do well not to get run over, to be honest with you. But yeah, I'm just not conscious of it. And I mean, he thinks it's funny. He quite likes that people look, and a lot of the time people are very nice, and you get converts, and occasionally you get really brave people that shout things at you from a van and drive off. But I just
Oh,
smile and wave.
we all have a drive-by faggot
Yeah.
on
Oh
us
yeah. Yeah.
sometimes. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, fine. Yeah, you're not wrong.
I consider it a failure if I don't get one, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
But
So you
yeah,
mentioned, did you say husband?
I did.
Yeah. How long have you been with your husband?
Oh gosh, we've been together 15 years nearly. We've been married for about 8. So I mean that's like 1,000 years in gay years, isn't it? Really?
It is. Oh my God. You should be in
Yeah.
the Smithsonian at this point.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've been together a long time. Yeah.
And how did you meet?
We met on well, we met. Do you remember what's it called? Gaydar.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So computer. So before the apps, before anything like that,
Oh,
it was
I had my little stint on Gaydar when I moved here to England back in 2009, but it was already dying at that point.
well, I think it must have been around that time we met. Was it 2009, 2010, something like that?
Yeah, I've been here for 14 years, so a year after, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it was around that time. My memory for dates is horrendous. I remember everything that I've done and where I've been. I've got no concept of what order that happened in. Um, but yeah, that would be around then. yeah, we got chatting on that, and I mean Liverpool is a relatively small place in terms of the gay scene. Well, it's quite a big gay scene, but you know, I mean, even in London and Berlin, everyone knows each other, everyone's shagged each other, everyone, you know, it's just the way it goes.
I
So,
no, I don't. I don't shag everyone. How very dare you? I try to,
I
but
apologize. I
no.
shouldn't judge
That's
everyone by my own standards, should I? I do apologize. So, so yeah, we met on that, and obviously realised that we had lots of friends in common, and we'd even been to the same thing. We'd even been to the same gigs and the same parties, and never quite met in the real world. So we chatted on there for like about a week, and then we met up just for a drink on. It was on like a Thursday night or something in a bar in town, and we've been pretty much inseparable ever since.
fantastic. As it's like, well, gives me hope. I'm still eternally single.
Well, listen, if I can do it, anyone can do it. Trust me.
Well, tell me a little bit about Liverpool. I don't know anything about Liverpool. And how's the kink scene there?
It's relatively small. It's to be fair, Liverpool's a great city, and it's quite an inspiring it's a beautiful city. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of music. There's a lot of alternative stuff. There's a lot of art stuff. There is quite a reasonably big gay scene, but the kink scene is very small, and I think that's for lots of reasons, really. I mean, first of all, I think because Manchester's only 30 miles away,
Mm.
and geographically is more of a centre. So Liverpool's a port city. So half of its catchment area is the Irish Sea. Whereas Manchester, you know, there are lots of towns around it and people naturally gravitate to the centre of Manchester. So it's able to sort of sustain a bigger scene there. I also think Liverpool's a very religious city. There's two great big cathedrals. So you're quite stuck. The gay scene is stuck quite literally between the largest Anglican cathedral in the world and one of the largest Catholic cathedrals outside of Italy. So you know those worlds don't always mix well. There's also a really sort of working class masculine culture in Liverpool. There's two cathedrals and two football teams, and the gays and the queers and the kinky people are sort of left with left to carve out the space in the
Left, left,
interim of all of that.
left, left with all the Catholic guilt.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, I wasn't brought up Catholic, so I don't speak from experience, but I know a lot of people that deal with that kind of thing. So yeah, the kink scene is small, but you know, things are changing. I mean, I'm trying to do a little bit myself. We did last Thursday, we did a book launch here in Liverpool of a new project that's a collaboration and it's called Unsafe Space, but it's based all around kink is part of it, but it's all about sort of celebrating and reveling in illicit sex of all kinds and unsafe space in the sense of the spaces that that queer and kinky people reclaim in order to have sex, so whether that's a public toilet or a dark room or a whatever, or unsafe space in the sense that, in an ideological sense, so having sex with someone that you shouldn't be having sex with, and you know, someone who's married or someone who's identifies as straight or whatever, and so we had a launch for that here, and that went really well. And then there's a guy I know he's starting to, oh, he has already started to set up kink events here in Liverpool, which hasn't happened before. So it is things are emerging, which is really good. It's really nice to see.
How did the book come about?
Well, a collaboration that we've talked about doing for years, and we finally got round to doing it. And it's a combination of photography, artwork, and written work as well. So the written work are real life stories about sex. So we interviewed people anonymously and got them to share all their filthy secrets with us, really, and that was transcribed into text. And we've tried to keep it in their authentic voices as well. So almost if you know the people, you'd know it was them. But if you don't know the people, it's a completely anonymous story. I mean, some of the people are happily going around telling everyone that they're in the book, and that's up to them. But we collected them anonymously. Obviously, the people in the images aren't anonymous. They've all signed a disclaimer to allow us to photograph them.
Fantastic.
But
So, if people wanted to get a hold of that book, where would they get a hold of it?
it will be available to buy online soon. So if they find me on Instagram or if they look for Unsafe Space on Instagram, we'll be sharing the link over the next few days. That will be available very soon.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, we are actually coming to the end of our time.
Oh,
It's been absolutely lovely to talk to you and exploring some of your kink, your fetish, your life, your art. So it's been absolute joy, and also meeting another sober person who's not necessarily sober out of need, but just by choice, and it just doesn't fit in. It's for me, it's important to have people on who have different experiences when it
yeah.
comes to being sober and kinky on the scene. So it's been absolutely lovely to have you on. If anyone's listened or watched and you've said something that's tickled them or they're curious about and so on, where can they get a hold of you?
They can find me on Instagram so I'm just Ben Uden Art, and the same on Twitter. Yeah, Instagram's probably the best one. That's the one I use the most because it's a nice sort of visual format, and unsafe space as well. If they just search for that, they will find me, and I'm happy to chat.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That was this week's episode. It was absolutely lovely to have Ben on talking about his glittery art, his personality, and his kink scene and Liverpool. I may need to put that on my list of places to travel to at some point when one of the kink events comes up. But thank you for watching or listening, and be safe, be sober, and be kinky. Bye.